Hey, Chris, how are you today?
Fine, Charlie. How are you?
Oh, good. So, we were talking briefly the other day, sort of how we met. Do you want to relate that as to
No,
our
we couldn't
long
figure
story
it
to each other?
out.
Yeah,
Was it 2000? We knew each other before, but then it was a summer camp in Hampshire College,
right.
right? And it was the end of summer camp, and I was friends with one of your students, Sean,
Hmm.
and we were all in the same flight. And I said to Sean, "Hey, I have an upgrade to first class. You want to go?" And Sean, being the good student she is, said, "Oh, I got to ask Sensei first." And I'm thinking, damn. So, but then you got on and we sat next to each other and we talked the entire flight.
We did. We did because I'd seen you around a lot over the years. I just didn't know who you were, right? So,
Yeah.
but that was the first time, and I guess then after that was we really got to know each other after different camps until Sensei threw us together in
On the
about
board.
2003. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
So yes,
bottom.
that was the camp must have been 2001 because yes, it was 2003 when we did the first iteration of the USAF board.
Right, and then worked on the transition, and then started traveling a lot, which was wonderful.
Okay, so let's figure out what countries we've been to. Spain,
Right,
France,
right,
England,
correct. Montreal,
Morocco,
Canada, Morocco, Belgium. Have we been to Netherlands?
Australia.
Oh, Australia, absolutely.
Yes, Netherlands.
Yeah,
Yeah, because remember we were in Amsterdam.
right. I don't think France is the one that we haven't been able to quite do.
You didn't go to Lesnevan?
Never been. I've always wanted.
Okay.
Just
And that's
never.
still 7.
Yeah, that's quite a few.
So,
That's it. I've been to a number of other countries for Aikido, but most of them with you.
did we go to Italy? We didn't go to Italy, did
No,
we?
no, but I've heard tales. I've heard tales.
So the last country we went to was a year ago, and
Yeah,
we went to Australia,
it was wonderful. Tasmania,
Tasmania, and then we did the seminar with Sensei in Melbourne, and it
right?
was their 50th anniversary, right?
And that was literally the last seminar I've been to.
Yeah, because we got back and
All
things
help.
shut down.
So
So we haven't seen each other in a year, Charlie.
I know, and I guess
I'm going through withdrawals.
no, I mean, because I'm used to going to 9 or 10 seminars a year, most of them you're at, and yeah, it's really very, very strange. So one thing I don't know much about for you, Chris, is how you started Aikido. And I've always been sort of curious, and now that I have you where you have to answer, I'd sort of like to know a little bit about your background and how you first met Sensei, etc. So spill the beans.
only if you go after me, okay?
It's fair enough.
All right. Well, I started the reason why a lot of women started back in the day because their boyfriend or significant other was doing it.
Hmm.
And my then boyfriend started with his name at that point was Daniel Furuya, and then he became
Oh,
Kensho Furuya. And Douglas Firestone was my first senpai and taught me how to roll.
oh my.
I know.
I had
And I literally remember the first day, and then he and Kathy Altieri teaching me how to roll. And I'm sure they were thinking, this isn't going to last. So, Furuya Sensei was a real strange duck in a lot of ways. An excellent teacher, but a kind of a strange duck. And he brought in a lot of different people. And he brought in Kanai Sensei, who he was at that point working with and learning under. He brought in Sugano Sensei, and then he brought in Yamada Sensei. And that was when I met Yamada Sensei. And that was like, I guess, late 80s, mid to late 80s.
When did you start in the dojo in Santa Barbara?
In 1997.
So you were with Furuya Sensei for all that time?
No. Like many of us, Furuya Sensei was a very interesting person,
Okay.
and we all parted company. So I went to different places for a while, and then I stopped practicing until I moved to Santa Barbara. And then I practiced with Xavier Staub and Geraldine Tremblay. And they moved to Hawaii, and that's when I took over.
Yeah, so my story is a little different. I had always been interested in martial arts, but really couldn't find anything that interested me until I was a substance abuse counselor, which is sort of ironic in a number of ways. But and one of my friends had been.
Yeah, considering you make the best Manhattans.
There you go. And at that time, we were living in Northeast Ohio, right by the lake. And one of my best friends started driving into Cleveland to take classes. And it turned out he was taking classes from Vecchio Sensei. And this was back in 73, I think. And so one night we were suitably imbibing beverages and he asked me to grab his hand.
Aww.
And the rest was really, I was just fascinated, but not fascinated enough to drive into Cleveland because I had a lot of other stuff going on. I started law school a year later, and a year after that, Aikido club was forming on campus. So myself and about 10 of our friends all decided to join. It was Yoshinkai Aikido under Takashi Kishida. And I spent the next 8 years training in that style. After a year or two, Masatoshi Morita came to us to be our teacher directly from the Tokyo Riot Police, and he had been Uchideshi to Shioda Sensei. So that was pretty interesting. It was tough training. I was always the slowest in class, which comes as no surprise.
Am I supposed to say things haven't changed?
Yeah, no, not at all. I mean, I'm living proof that if you keep training, you eventually, hopefully, will improve some. And I was training at some points 5 days, 6 days a week. And I went through Kenshu training and for 2 years and made through my Nidan, and then moved to Cincinnati, and my Aikido life changed. Aikido, if you're in Yoshinkai Aikido, is very, how do I put it, narrowly focused. It's, for many of the practitioners, they view it only as the only real Aikido because it in some respects is a little closer, I think, to Aikido than may have been practiced years ago. But that being said, moving to Cincinnati opened my eyes. The teachers at that point were Mark Commissar, who at that time was in Nidan, and Dennis Main, who was a student of Andy Demko's, right? And is now in North Carolina with in the dojo.
Charlotte. I think
Yeah,
Charlotte?
with
Yeah.
Carolina, yeah. And so one of the first senior people I met was Andy Demko in a seminar, and then Rick Stickles.
Yes.
Yeah, Rick Stickles. Linda Vecchio. And so I was training in all these people, but I was still driving up to Toledo, where my family was living, for the next year, every weekend, and going and training up there. I sent in my renewal for my Shidoin license after about a year and a half, and it was sent back to me with my check. And no, seriously, my teacher told me I had a choice to make: either never train with other Aikido people again and start my own dojo, or find a new teacher.
So you started your own dojo.
It was it was a difficult, no, I didn't start a new dojo. By that time, I had become so intrigued with the wider Aikido world. I trained with Frank Duran. who was Mark's teacher, and all these people. And I finally wrote a letter to Yamada Sensei asking if I could become his student because he was coming to teach a seminar in Cincinnati. So he showed up, and I was his uke for the weekend. Let's just put it that way. And I've been his loyal student ever since. The true gift I've gotten from all my training, besides just Yamada Sensei's trust in me and the worlds he's opened up to me in terms of Aikido, is I've been introduced to a much wider world of Aikido with all the different Shihan, all the different people, and all the people I've met all over the world. And for that, I will be ever thankful to him. But so that was sort of my road to meeting Sensei, and then the rest is sort of history since then. We go ahead.
No, you first, Charlie.
Okay. So I think the thing for me that was so interesting was how I saw so many paths that the different Shihan had followed. They all started from mostly the same basic information, the same basic training, but then their personalities, I think, really shaped who they were. And for all the years training with all the different Shihan, training at Home Dojo, training around the world, it's really opened my eyes to how important it is to develop your own Aikido, but never forget where you've been, right? And I think one of the things that has always fascinated me about Yamada Sensei is how clear his technique is, how even when he is doing something that I thought I'd seen before, there's always another layer to the foundation of what he's doing. And it's really, I think, made me a better student. It's why I still enjoy training today, why this last year has been so difficult, right? But you know, what he's brought to Aikido for me has really sort of formed my path for the last, 30 some odd years. Yeah. So, and I know you,
I
go ahead.
go on.
No.
You first, Charlie. I was going to say on that, I think why I ended up saying I was Yamada Sensei's student after the path of Furuya Sensei, then Kanai Sensei, and then, Xavier and Geraldine Senseis, but of course they moved to Hawaii. So, was the openness of his technique. So, I mean, everything was just so open-minded. And I come, in the West Coast with Chiba Sensei, things can be sort of like, this is the way you're going to do stuff. You're going to move this way and you're going to do that thing and stuff like that. And you got somebody who said, just do it, make it your own. And that was really wonderful. And I really, really liked that you were encouraged to go and practice in other styles and practice with other people and just enjoy it, enjoy the art. That was a real mind blower for me.
Well, for me too. And I think that was, so eye-opening, and what really got me to follow him was I could experience all these people, but still get the foundation and direction. And he's given me lots of direction on a lot of different levels. And that's been wonderful too, especially as I got more involved in first the USAF and board, et cetera. And then with the IAF, he's always been happy to share direction and comment with me as I've walked that path, which has been a strange parallel too.
Well, Charlie, I think people watching this they have an idea of what the USAF board does, which is a lot more boring than what people think. But I don't think they understand what the IAF does. You want to do it in 20 seconds.
I can't do it in
Actually,
20.
30.
I'll try.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
So one of the things, I was chairman of the USAF input until I think 2012, 2013. And at, at that point, as I left as chairman, Sensei asked me to become the IAF representative to from the USAF, because the USAF is the current member for the United States. And that was eye-opening to watch.
Now, why was it eye-opening?
Well, first I got to meet people from 50 different countries following different Shihan, different people, and then get to see some of the work that needs to be done to help people in other countries survive and to help spread Aikido. And it's been interesting. I mean, what people don't realize with the IAF was originally set up by Nidai Doshu to have a place for Aikido in the international sports world. And that may sound more sort of weird, but for many countries, the Aikido groups cannot get government support unless they're part of an international organization for their sport or activity. In many countries, the places where they train, financing, even the ability to confirm grades or obtain a teaching license is controlled by the government. In the United States, we don't have that, obviously, but in other countries, it's critical. So without being a member of the IAF, those countries would not have the standing to be able to get the support of their governments. So as a result, the IAF is part of GIFES, which is an international sports organization for non-Olympic sports, and the Association of International Martial Arts, which is called AIMS. And now my cat's jumping up here. Stop it. And just in the last year, we became part of the International Olympic movement recognized by the Olympics. So, and the critical part of that is we wanted to make sure that if there was going to be an Aikido that's represented in the world, that it'd be Aikikai Aikido, because clearly groups like Tamiki that have competition was not the path we wanted that to go. Sensei was very clear that he did not want competition Aikido. And one of the things we've been able to do just in the last 4 years is to get these various international organizations to officially designate Aikido as a non-competitive sport. And this is as a demonstrative sport. And this is critical because we're the only, I hate to use the word sport, but for the purposes of this part of the conversation, we're the only group in the world that is recognized that way. So what that allows us to do for our members is to give them a position where they can now appeal to their countries for financial support in terms of the spread and growth of Aikido, for having places to train, et cetera. For many dojo in this COVID era, if they didn't have that support, they would have ceased to exist. As bad as things are in this country, they're worse in many other places this year. Sorry, that was too much. That wasn't 20 seconds.
I gave you 30, but yes. So how does the U.S. fit into all this? Because we don't get government support, for instance, and
no, but we get to have our input in how the international Aikido community operates. For instance, currently, I'm one of the 9 directors. I was elected at the last Congress. I'm one of the 9 directors of the IAF. And in the last year, we have been meeting with, last 4 years, we've worked closely with Humble Dojo, Doshu, and Dojo Cho with regard to the future of Aikido, trying to look at how we would like to be able to support the growth of Aikido throughout the world. As a result, I've just, along with one other attorney on that board of directors, We've just rewritten a good part of the international statutes, which will be presented at the next Congress. It's been very difficult for countries to join the IAF. You can only join once every 4 years. It was a lengthy process. And one of the things that Doshu wanted was for us to become inclusive. In other words, to be able to reach out to many countries so that all countries could be represented in the IAF. We currently have over 20 new countries that will be joining, hopefully at the next Congress, for the work that's been done over the last several years. But what we're going to be doing is allowing members to join as associate members almost immediately. Those associate members are basically countries where they're not a Hambu recognized organization like the USAF, but maybe have basically complied with all the international regulations with the exception of length of time. So they can then join the IAF right away, participate in all the organizational activities with the exception of they can't vote. And then at the next Congress, they can be let in. We're also in the middle of rewriting. We've just started working with Hambu Dojo to rewrite the international organization, international regulations, which will have a big impact. One of the problems that's been over the years is Hambu Dojo has recognized lots of organizations in one country, which has encouraged some infighting, splitting of organizations. We have 15 in the United States. I think there are 22 in Russia, et cetera, and it's really caused a lot of problems. So we're working on how to rewrite those to deal with some of those issues. And obviously that's been a concern for the USAF to make sure that we encourage groups to work together, make sure that we don't cause the dissipation in so much of Aikido throughout the different countries. So
now we have a primer on the IAF.
You asked.
I did.
Sorry. So tell me about your experience as on the board, how that's worked out for you, the USAF board. We'll turn this around. You've got 45 seconds.
I have 45 seconds. Well, Charlie, you and I started together at as I said, the first iteration, because prior to that, for people who didn't know, the board consisted of, was it Chiba Sensei, Sugana Sensei, Kanai Sensei, and Yamada Sensei. And that was it. And Tohei Sensei. That was it. And then they said, okay, let's make this a little bit, more formal. And I think our first board meeting, there were like 20 people. I think there were 16 or 20 people on the board. And then it just kind of went from there. And so I went off the board 8 years ago. No, 4 years ago. And just serve as advisor. And I couldn't be happier.
So
it's a lot of work.
Why don't you tell people what the USAF board actually does, since I think a lot of students really don't know.
Well, we sit around, we drink champagne and eat bonbons. Yeah. We watch TV, we compare Netflix shows, and then we get manicures and pedicures.
There you go, exactly.
The truth is that what the board does is really boring. I mean, as you know from being in a lot of meetings, it's just generally trying to do policy, trying to do right by the members, trying to keep the group, the USAF solvent, and trying to further Aikido in the way that the founding Shihan envisioned it. And I know that sounds very pie in the sky and oh, la-di-da, but no, that's really what we're trying to do.
And I think it becomes certainly harder in these times.
Oh God, I don't know any dojo that hasn't had to. They've had to close maybe, even though they exist online, or suffered some kind of financial setback because of this. This has been terrible for everybody, and I think it's going to be an interesting one, as we get vaccines, as we're able to open up more, it'll be interesting to see how we can grow again.
It's not just our country too. I mean, one of the things I've seen is, we have regular meetings, several meetings a month to talk about some of these issues with the IF. We're reducing our fees to our member nations substantially this year. We were supposed to have the Congress last year. I'm actually one of the longest terms of the board of directors, which is 5 years, because we couldn't hold a Congress. And this coming year, it's going to be a virtual Congress. And it was for two reasons. One, we didn't know where things would be as of this October in terms of COVID, even though the Olympics will be held in Tokyo. So was our Congress supposed to be there. So instead, we're going virtual, which was also meant to save our members a lot of money, because going to Japan and spending at least a week there is not cheap. So that's another way we've tried to save our members money, because a lot of them are hurting even worse than in the US.
It's going to be interesting to see how things go, because we're all getting used to a virtual life. I mean, and Aikido itself is not virtual. I mean, it doesn't exist really well unless we can touch each other. We can, work out with each other. We can practice. We can see each other. I mean, that's really the essence of, our practice. But it's going to be interesting, because we've now spent the past year virtual.
Well, not everywhere in the country, though. I mean,
no, Florida's the Wild West. Everything's open there.
You guys are still totally virtual.
Yes, right? No, we are doing outdoor classes, but we have very strict regulations. It's solo work. There is some kumi tachi and kumi jo, but generally it's very small classes, very socially distant. That's all we can do right now.
We've been able to do a little more. We have one contact class a week.
And how is that attended? Do you get a lot of people?
We're averaging maybe 12 to 15 people a class, which is actually not too bad considering.
No. Yeah. And do they have to be in pods, or do they have to be in
training groups, basically? I try to use the word pods, and every time I do in the dojo, people get pissed at me. So we'll just say training groups. I like pods. I think pods are.
Why are they upset about pods?
I have no idea. Anyway, so the way it works is you can sign up to be in a pod, I'll use it here, of 2 to 4 students. And then those are the only students you can do contact training with. You have to wear masks. We have 6 MERV 13 fan filters set up around the mat. And our HVAC system has a MERV 13 filter. We take temperatures as they come in. People wear masks. And then we use a viricide at the end of every class to basically clean the mat, to make sure everything works out well. That's been going on since October. We've had no incidents whatsoever of any infection, which is, I'm glad about. And we've gotten to the point where we're about to start within the next 2 weeks, a second class. Right now we have about 5 classes a week, 1 contact, the rest are all weapons distance training. Some kumitachi, kumijo, kumitanto, and tanto. So
yes, you did that for us.
I'll talk about that in a minute. And I'm teaching 2 classes a week now, both weapons. And I will be going to start a second class, which will start the first several weeks as weapons distance training. But eventually, I'm looking within 4 to 6 weeks of making that a contact class also that I will teach. I've not been teaching a contact class, though now I've had both my shots as of 3 weeks ago. So and with the success of how things have gone with our other class, I'm feeling that that will be good. And that's going to be a basics test preparation class. People who want to
We
solo,
yeah,
people
go
who want
on.
to solo train can come to that class and work on solo practice. Um, and we have, because our mat's 3,400 square feet, we can split our mat up, and we have a separate
Yeah.
training room that's about another 2,000 square feet that you can use for weapons training. So we could actually split classes and things, which unfortunately most dojos don't have that ability. But so for us, things are slowly going back just in time. We just today reviewed a proposal from our teachers who had taught the children's class on restarting the children's class. Though on a different, I haven't finished actually reading through the proposal, but that will probably happen within the next 4 to 6 weeks also.
See, we're getting to the point, we've got a couple people, we're a much smaller dojo, of course, but we have a couple people who have been vaccinated. And I just got my first vaccine. Yay. So I'm feeling okay about doing outdoor kids classes. Again, limited, you know, solo type of practice. Um, but I don't anticipate us opening for kind of adult contact classes for months because
Right.
it's a question of people getting vaccinated or being able to work in pods. And California right now is just coming down from a horrific surge. So we don't really, you know, there's no hurry. But
We've
it'll be
been,
interesting. I'm very curious to see what it'll be like to be on the mat again and do contact Aikido, because that's something all of us have not, at least in Santa Barbara, have not
yeah,
done since for a year, almost a year. March 12th will make it a year.
my last contact class was about a week after I got back from Australia in January because I had a severe
Then you had shoulder
shoulder
surgery. Yeah.
dislocation and surgery. Um, so I'm a little nervous actually getting back
I
out
am too.
doing
I did
contact.
try. I have to confess, what I did do was I got to the dojo early before weapons class, and I went inside and I just rolled. And I was in jeans and everything like that. And I just rolled around and I got up and I was dizzy and I was nauseous.
Yes.
And all I could think was, oh, Jesus Christ, this is going to be horrible. So I made it a point from then on to get to class early and just roll so I could at least pretend to think I was doing something. But I haven't been able to do that for a while.
I
And
have,
you're supposed to say, why?
why?
Because we got to rent out our dojo to a movie production. So
You
we
can't,
weren't allowed in.
you can't say who the star was, right?
No, but I can tell you that it was a Netflix movie called The Gray Man, and if you Google it, you can find out. But all we know is Mr. VIP was in there practicing.
Excellent.
I'm just hoping Mr. VIP and his kids will come to the dojo when this is all done.
Because you live close by, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. So what, as I said, I'm sort of nervous getting back in, though I've been teaching, twice a week, teaching weapons, and one of the fun parts of that has been, um, I had taught the occasional weapons class before this, but now getting my students to concentrate on just that aspect of teaching has been pretty incredible. And one of the things I pulled out was a lot of my repertoire from when I was a Kenshu student, still in Yoshinkai, um, and a lot of the katas and kumitachi, kumijo, kumitachi jo, kumitanto jo, kumitanto tachi are really sort of interesting. The last month or so, we've been concentrating just on tanto training.
We
And
know.
doing three tanto solo katas, and then one Kumi Tato Kata with partner, and we'll be moving on to some Kumi Tanto Tachi, Kumi Tanto Jo. One of the things
Now
I
that
like
was an
about
excellent class, by the way. I should just tell everyone that Charlie taught a Tanto solo Tanto work class for us during, and you know, it never rains in California, and it was the one rainy day, so we said, okay, let's do an online class. And Charlie taught, and we all had a lot of fun. I, of course, did not go on video because I did not want to stomach the criticism of how how badly I was doing.
one of the reasons I like doing the Tanto work is it really teaches students how to properly handle a Tanto. Having seen the way many students in and outside my dojo do in Tanto Dori and others is a little, sometimes, I don't know what the word is, but teaching the proper way to thrust, stab, slash, etc., and how to properly handle the Tanto, to be able to use it by easily changing the position of it and all, I think is really a nice skill to have. Um, and when you start doing some of the Kumitanto Tachi, Kumitanto Jo work, especially, it's really a lot of fun because the Ma'ai you're working with is so different. So students have enjoyed it a lot. So we'll,
Or so they tell you.
I think they do. They seem to be smiling at the end of class. No
I
one's
gotta
dying.
tell you,
So
you
it's
know what?
kind
I have to,
of cool.
I have to say that I think the best part about having the classes,
Mhm.
though, is not. It's great that people are working on their weapons, and that certainly has been very good for their Aikido. But it's just keeping connected.
Yes.
It's just, it almost doesn't matter what would be taught. You know, like you could do breathing exercises, but then everyone gets to see each other, and everyone gets to talk to each other. And even though you're distant, it's like, you know, we were a community before. How do we keep that going now? And I think that is kind of more important at this moment as we
Uh,
try to, you know,
um, since we have winter here now and moving into,
winter.
yeah,
What's winter?
whatever. So before we were just
Is
doing our
that
work.
when that white stuff comes floating down?
So we've been inside the dojo for about the last month or so, and that's been very nice. One of the, students have asked for some more classes. I've been reluctant to add them, though we're just starting to now, because I was concerned about spreading people out too much, right? Um, I'd rather have fewer classes with more students in it, so there's more opportunity to be together,
Yeah,
and more classes with fewer students in them. So because we used to have 22 classes a week, we're at 5 a week right now, and we'll go up to 7.
yeah.
Um, and so that's been nice. And I think so. We're just going to play it by ear. I don't see us moving up to our old schedule anytime soon. We're just fortunate we've been able to at least maintain our school at this point. It's been difficult financially. Obviously, we had just bought
Yeah.
our space the year before. Um, so, mortgages and all that, we've been able to make it through what we have for dues, what we had, some reserves, and then through generous contributions from our members and others.
I got to
Without
tell you, if
that,
we didn't
we
have
wouldn't
Mr.
have been,
VIP, like renting the place, it would have been very, very hard,
yeah.
you know.
And
And
so,
unfortunately, Mr. VIP is actually starting his movie, so
well, maybe we'll get
dang.
it back. So one of the things I wanted to tell you how much I've enjoyed is the Wednesday night get-togethers at your dojo.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Chris for those of you who are listening, Chris has sort of adopted me in some respects, so that I get to attend their Wednesday night happy hours. It's been wonderful. I've really enjoyed it. Get to see, Tinka and Chris and Ava and all the other people. Um, and you have a very nice group of students. I do too, but you do too.
No,
Just
I have a great group of students, and the hardest, actually the most important thing for me, and I said this before, was just trying to keep us together,
mm,
and trying to keep the community spirit kind of still there, because it's really easy to kind of further away. I mean, you find other things to do. Zoom doesn't do it for you as a class. I mean, there's all sorts of reasons. And so we just started doing the Wednesday night things every week so that people can check in.
right.
And it's been a lot of fun.
Lots of fun. Anyway,
Well, you're welcome. You've been adopted. But we haven't had any real good bombshells or anything like that recently.
good. I'm not looking for bombshells in my life these days.
Oh, just some good gossip
Good
or
ones, I
something, but no.
guess, would be good. So, one of the things I'm looking forward to is getting back and seeing people in person. I'm hoping by the end of the year we'll be able to do some seminars again and all. I just don't know. It's things are so up in the air right now. Um, it certainly looks brighter than it did a month or two ago. But we had thought of doing a seminar just before things shut down, and we had some seminars planned that we had to cancel, and we're just sort of wondering. We were just talking about it at our board meeting this last week when we can do it again. I'm just hoping before the end of the year we can try and do a get together at our dojo.
Yeah, I think for us it's just opening, and the metric for us for opening is the number of people vaccinated. Because again, we're a smaller dojo than and if we can get a number of people vaccinated, we can start having classes.
Is that a metric for you, that you won't be able to do contact unless the people have been vaccinated?
It's my own personal metric for the dojo.
Okay.
But
I think it goes across the board. I was just sort of curious about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't. I mean, I guess you could say if there's a family, or if there are people who strictly say we're only going to work with each other and we follow each other's, lives and make sure that we're all doing it safely. I guess you could have those people be in a pod of sorts, but and even if people are vaccinated, I'd still want people just to work with one partner for a while, but it's very important, I think, because we're a much smaller space than yours, and
Right.
we are, we need to actually be very mindful. We can't run away from it.
So one of the things when we first started the contact training, we had a dojo-wide Zoom meeting. And I also then met with students a couple of times who were actually going to attend that Sunday class. And basically I said is, when you're training in a pod or dedicated group, or with your training in the weapons class, part of our reiki and another part of our etiquette and respect extends to everyone we train with. You are no longer, if you come into this dojo, there just for your own training in terms of your health, etc. You have to pay attention to the things you do outside the dojo, because you're taking, and as we do every time we get on the mat, you're taking the lives of your fellow students in your own hands. And the basic respect we owe to each other requires you to pay attention not only to what you're doing in the dojo with regard to mask wearing, etc., but if you're going to join a pod or group or decide to train here, you need to pay attention to what you do outside the dojo, because what you do will affect everyone inside our community. And I think students understood that. And it's no different than when you bow on the mat, right?
Well, what you just said, Charlie, though, that's the way we should be approaching our lives and our training anyway. I think the pandemic has just put it into a clearer focus about this is what we should be doing.
I mean, going to a bar before, that really didn't matter if you went to a bar or not, and then went and trained as long as you weren't drunk. But now it makes a difference, right?
Yeah,
If
it's better if
you're-
you're drunk.
Yeah, so not only drunk, but if you're putting yourself in situations that could possibly endanger the people you're going to train with, or if you're traveling, or if someone in your family or a worker becomes infected, then you need to stay away for 8 to 10 days to make sure that you aren't infected, those sorts of things. And because once again, you are taking everyone else's lives in your hands, especially in the contact class, and you need to be careful. You just it's a new world, and you need to make those changes part of our etiquette now. That's sounds a little dogmatic, but I firmly believe it, right?
That's okay, Charlie.
People understand that. But I think people understand that, right?
I think so. So let's shift the subject for a second.
Yes, dear.
Yes, dear. The Aikido world just had a horrible, rocking thing happen with the death of Donovan Sensei. So, what's your best memory of Donovan Sensei?
There's so many, and I can't really pick one out. I will tell you the very first time I saw him on the mat was eye-opening. His ukemi, his connection with other people, it was one of those things. It was almost like when I was a beginning student, and even though I was, I think, a Sandan at the time, when I saw him, it was like, oh, I want to be able to do that. Never quite got there. But it was truly an eye-opening experience, and he was always so generous with who he was, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just um, and it was interesting. There was a directing committee meeting for the IAF last week, and the first thing everyone did was give condolences about Donovan and what a huge loss it was for the Aikido community. And I can tell you there will be something posted on the IAF website about his loss and what it means, not only to all of us, but what the great loss it is to the Aikido community. And I really don't know what else to say. It was just his passing goes so much further than just the USAF. He's affected a lot
Yeah.
of lives outside our community too. I was talking to Charlene, my wife, this morning, and she had just watched the video of last time Donovan was in Brazil. And one of the things he was talking about was watching Yamada Sensei and old Ozawa Sensei and some of the other people training. He's like, I don't know how they were still able to continue to train and bring beauty and depth to their Aikido. And he says that's what he wanted for himself. And it was just sort of heartbreaking because that's just not going to happen. But he has given us his gift by giving us his training, and it's our obligation, and especially his students' obligations, those who train with him the most, to make sure that that does get carried on. And even though he isn't with us, that'll live on. Um, and have that generousness and sparkling ability is a treasure that we just won't keep. We can pass on to others.
No, that's true.
How about you?
You know, like you, there are many stories, um, but I remember two classes. One class was in winter camp, and it was probably, I don't know, 12, 13 years ago. And he did this kind of thing where it was an uchi kaiten, and then he moved your hand was like this, and he moved your hand, and then he did all this type of stuff. And I remember watching the class and then doing the class and thinking, oh my God, this this is next level. This is amazing. And then the next class was many years later, was he came out to Los Angeles and was teaching. And I brought a bunch of students to the seminar, and he was showing people how to roll out of Koshinage.
Mm.
And I just remember thinking, this is what makes Donovan Sensei amazing. Because who would have ever thought of doing it this way, and who would have ever taught it so well that my students were doing it by the end of class? I was not. I freely admit that, but they were. And it was, I will miss having that awe-inspiring teaching.
Yeah. I don't know where to go from here.
I don't know. Let's talk about someone who's alive.
I will tell you, would you like to know my favorite, I don't want to say memory, but yeah, favorite memory of Yamada Sensei?
Yes, let's hear.
Thing that happened. So it was when we were still going to, what was the name of the college in Rhode Island for summer camp? Roger
Williams.
Yeah. And it was the year that Osawa Sensei, old Osawa Sensei, came as the senior guest instructor. And it was after class and everyone was sitting around in the gym, and Osawa Sensei was doing a question and answer period. And one of the students, and Yamada Sensei and Kanai Sensei were there, kneeling on the side. And one of the students asked, so Sensei, Yamada Sensei and Kanai Sensei were your students, and did they take Guru Kemi, or how were they students? Osawa Sensei, and I can see it in my mind's eye now. He said, Yoshimitsu. They jumped up, like exploded off the mat and attacked him. It was, and he just threw them around for a minute, and he made him sit there and goes, yes. But the thing that was so amazing to me was, after all these years, the two of who I viewed the most senior and experienced and amazing people were 15, 16, 18-year-old students again. And in that moment, it captured the teacher-student relationship, and I'll never forget it. It was, for me, a magical moment. And you could just see the moment he said their names, there was no question that they were going to give him everything they could at that moment as their teacher. And that was my favorite moment. I know. And it really, and I sort of tell that to my students too at different times, just because I think it's such it just epitomizes what it means to be a student, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the obligation, the giri that you have as a kohai to your senpai, right? And how they've passed that on to all of us, right? That senpai kohai relationship, the duty that relationship entails, not only of the senior to the junior, but the junior to the senior, to do your best to carry on the gift they've given you and give that to others. And I think it's one of the best things about being a teacher is to be able to give that to others and then see them excel and pass you in some cases, and hopefully many cases, and continue and see them then pass it on to their students and their kohai. So anyway, that for me, it was wonderful.
God, I don't have any great stories like that, because I just have stories about again, it's like the Donovan story, just having stories of Sensei, Yamada Sensei teaching these amazing classes.
Mhm.
And all of a sudden you think, wait a minute, I've seen him do this technique a gazillion times before. And now he's shifting his hip just this way. And it completely changes it. And you feel like you just got on the mat for the first time, one of those things. And that's what kind of keeps me actually still practicing is, realizing, God, there's so much to learn. There's so much to do. And as for the Kohai Senpai relationship, I got to tell you, I'm still trying to get my students to wash my car, and it's not working very well. They always find an excuse, I don't know.
You have to wash the salt off it. You don't have that problem.
Well, I'm telling them, all I do is wax on, wax off, wax on, pretend you're watching Cobra Kai or something. But they're not listening, Charlie. What should I do? Yeah, salt. That's what we have, not that other white stuff.
Yeah.
That happens when it gets cold.
So I'm not sure where we go from here, but there was just an article that I was reading from Chiba Sensei about Shoshin, beginner's mind.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, that's always been an important part of my training. And I had a lecture from Kushida Sensei on that in my Kenshu training. And what you just explained about your experience with Yamada Sensei has happened with me with Sensei so many times. And it has to do with our ability to have that beginner's mind every time we step on the mat, because he may have been doing that hip thing all along and we just didn't have the eyes to see it, right?
Well, you're probably right about that.
And, I think there's a thing where we see someone do something time after time, say, oh, and he'll start to do Shihonage. Oh, he's doing Shihonage. And so you do the Shihonage you think he's doing, but it's not, right?
I know. Yeah.
And you have to snap yourself back into trying to look at what Sensei is teaching at that moment, because he's never taught it that way before, ever. There's always some little difference. And our task as a student is to capture that, however poor our attempts are at it. And every time.
Then our challenge as a teacher is to first capture that and then try to teach it.
Yeah. But trying to keep that sense of open wonder on the mat, at the beautiful art that we practice, and realize that every time we do it, it's a little different. Every time our teacher does it, it's a little different. What's different? How's it different? Am I capturing it? Am I showing it? Right? And for me, I think that's the hardest part and the most fun, right? But keeping that idea of Shoshin in our training, I think is one of the things that, at least for me, keeps it alive. Because if we were thinking of Katate Dori Shihonage, and you learn it in 5th Q, and then it's just the same for you every time, what's the fun in that, right? What's the fun in doing Shominachi Ariminage if you don't really peel the onion on it, see the different layers? And I think that's been the fun part for me, is as I train, even though I've been training, I don't know, almost 50 years, I don't know how many years it's been, it's still fun to get on the mat because there's always something new there to capture, to see. Otherwise, you're just going through the motions. And I know there have been times in my training where I've felt I'm going through the motions. And the challenge at that point is always to recapture that beginner's mind, that mind of discovery. So,
Well, I have a feeling that when we finally get back on the mat, it's going to be like starting. It's going to be
well,
like
I went down,
the first time.
I went to kneel down the other day and discovered my knee is not working as well as it was. I think I need to really start stretching out and doing stuff because my body, having a year of not doing that kind of training is, yeah, I need to start, like you said, rolling around on the mat, those sorts of things. I need to start doing more of that.
Well, I've decided that when I start doing contact training, I'm going to get like a kid. I'm not going to work with one of the guys or anyone like that. Let's just ease into this.
Well, I've got my pod set up already. So
who's in your pod?
Matt Bolton,
Mm-hmm.
who's in Iran, who trained for many years at New York Aikido. He was a 6 a.m. Class, but came to us, I think it's been about 4 years ago now. Anyway, it's wonderful to train with. He's, for any class I teach, I also have appointed a student that's responsible for being there. So that if I can't teach, they'll teach. And so Matt's that person for me. And then Yoko Nomura, who you know, who's a Nidan I keep pushing to test. She's
a killer, by the way.
Telling her this, but
she's a killer.
She's wonderful. Aikido's very good. So is Matt. Oh, I shouldn't be saying this in public, should I? Anyway, they'll just be embarrassed. But they, and then Mark Bushley, who's one of my students who had gone away from Aikido for about 10 years and just came back. Interesting guy. And just really, ouch, my cat just bit me. Sorry. Interesting guy, and just really, it's really fun to have him back on the mat. So that's my pod. And once we start doing contact training, we will be, we'll be throwing each other around, hopefully soon.
Go easy is all I can say. Start easy.
I will. I think only my body will only go easy at this point till I work out some of the kinks.
So we teach a class with the local college.
Oh.
So this is a whole different subject. And a lot of the people who come to this class, it's for continuing education. And by the way, I'm slowly being pushed by tugboat into the computer. Got all 4 paws on my lower back and pushing. So in case all of a sudden my face gets really big, that's why. Anyway, so back to that. We teach this class with the local city college. It's part of the continuing education, and we mostly get older people. I mean, and by older, I mean retired in their 60s, 70s. So it's been an experience up until the pandemic started, trying to teach a class that requires very little falling. Or if you do falling, you have to break it down in such a way that they don't get scared or able to do it. So we've been doing this for, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years. We've gotten better at it. But I guess this is a long roundabout way of saying, do you have any classes for older people? Are you looking at that? Because the Aikido population is aging and newer students coming in tend to be older.
Not particularly. One of the things I've never wanted students to practice outside of their full physical limitations, right? I mean, I have some students that can't do Sawari-Waza, whether they're young or old. And so we've always made adjustments for those, but I'm interested in seeing what other people have done, and I'll certainly be talking to you more about it, because we've recently signed up several new students, one of who's in his early 60s, The others, though, are in their 30s, which I'm pretty pleased about.
Yeah, that's pretty great
We're
because,
just starting them off. So, yeah, I think that's your point's a good point, and we're gonna have to look at that.
Oh.
So I think we've gotten the notice that our time is about up. Do you have any final words for the good and welfare?
Oh no, it's always just so wonderful to see you, Charlie. I mean, we talk virtually every day as it is. It's kind of fun to actually see you and talk to you.
So hopefully before this year is out, we'll be able to see each other in person, do some training together again.
Wouldn't that be great?
Nice, yes. And I guess I'll see you Wednesday.
Yes, that's right.
Anyway.
All right. Well, you can bring up Luna and I'll bring up Tugboat and everyone can see them.
Well, I would
Oh,
if I
come on.
could. He just ran away.
Just tugs.
Well, he's the
Say
bigger
hi.
star than any. Oh, he's got that glowery look today. Look at that. Ooh.
I just woke him up.
Yeah.
Having tried to push me into the computer, he's now decided it's better to be a doorstop.
There you go. Okay. Thanks, Chris. And thanks, Sharon and Kevin, for
and thanks, Aleksey and Sharon and Kevin.